and welcome to London's West End. Over the next 5 days, we're going to be taking you behind the scenes of some of Theatreland's top shows and bringing you all the goss, glamour and glitz that makes this the theatre capital of the world. On Friday, all eyes will be on Theatreland when the winners of the Laurence Olivier Awards will be announced. And here on A Week in the West End, for the very first time, we're giving you the chance to vote for your favourite show. And the winner will collect their award at the glittering ceremony on Friday, and we're going to be there. But in the meantime, here's what's coming up on today's show. Dallas star Linda Gray tells us why she loves the London stage. One of the world's most successful theatre producers talks us through his career in the West End. Lord Attenborough, that's sticky to the world of showbiz, tells us how he was cast in a play in 1952. And you know what? It's still a crowd puller 50 years on. We follow a day in the life of the Phantom of the Opera. And your chance to win tickets to the shows in our West End competition. A Week in the West End, it's your backstage pass.
I love the West End because I'm in the heart of Theatreland.
I love being not just part of a theatre company, which is great, they become family, but part of a bigger theatre family.
A licensed sex shop, girls in doorways.
The theatres are so beautiful, and the audiences are smart.
I love walking through the West End at night. I don't get to do that very often because I'm in the shows.
The West End is, you know, is the pinnacle, really, of what you can achieve in the theatre in this country.
For me, half of the enjoyment of doing what I do is being backstage with theatrical people.
Italian delis, liquor stores.
I think there's some very good eating.
People will stop and greet one and say, oh, I like you on the television, and that's lovely.
Theatres.
One of the most magical things about the West End is one's dressing room. Very special, and people always want to come back and see you in your dressing room as well.
Wow, look at all this. Look at this. This is incredible. This is the West End. This is life.
Now, I'm here in Covent Garden, which has had a market for over 350 years. But not quite as old as that is the Agatha Christie play, The Mousetrap, which celebrates its 50th birthday this year.
Empires rise and fall, governments come and go, but there's a small corner of London's Theatreland that is forever 1950s England. It all began when Winston Churchill was Prime Minister, when food was still being rationed, and when the BBC, the only TV channel, stopped broadcasting at 10:30 p.m.
Goodbye, everybody.
The Mousetrap was written by royal command. When Queen Mary was going to be 80, the BBC got in touch with her and said, Ma'am, what would you like as a birthday present? Opera, Shakespeare, whatever. And she said, I'd like an Agatha Christie play. So Mrs. Christie, as she was then, was approached, and she sat down and she penned a little half-hour play called Three Blind Mice. And that's how the Mousetrap began. It first opened in October 1952 at the Theatre Royal in Nottingham. That was its tryout. And in the cast, of course, was Richard Attenborough and his wife, Sheila Sim.
We thought it wouldn't work. And after the first night, we had a sort of, terrible session, sitting in, I remember, in a sort of well with a big staircase going up in the hotel. And after about 3 hours of depressing talk, Agatha went to bed, and we were still talking with the producer and the director and so on. And Agatha leaned over the stairway, I remember, and said, darlings, I think you'd be much more sensibly employed going to bed. I can assure you we shall have quite a nice little run.
Christie granted the royalties for the play's entire run to her only grandchild, Matthew.
She always told me that the Mousetrap would last what she described as a nice little run, which was variously interpreted as 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, which I suppose in those days was a nice little run. I don't think when it started that anybody had the impression that it was going to be anything like what it's turned out to be.
Whilst Matthew Pritchard could be classed as the luckiest man in showbiz, the Bolting brothers, by contrast, are the unluckiest. In 1956, these producers paid £10,000 for the Mousetrap's movie rights, with the proviso that they wouldn't begin filming until 6 months after the West End production closed. Both died waiting.
Apart from the slump when Dickie left the cast, the Mousetrap has run and run and run, breaking every record in the thespian universe.
It employed the world's most patient understudy, Nancy Seabrook. She spent 15 years waiting for someone to break a leg. David Raven achieved the most durable actor award in the Guinness Book of Records for 4,575 performances as Major Metcalf. The play's been performed in 44 countries, translated into 24 languages, and seen by tens of millions all over the world.
The Mousetrap is a phenomenon, there is no doubt about that. And obviously people, us included, have analysed why it is a success. Most thriller writers make the crime very important. Now, Agatha Christie actually doesn't. She gets over the crime quite quickly, and then we spend the rest of the time solving the crime. And that's its success, because people come to the Mousetrap, and within 5 minutes, they're sitting there working out who the killer could be.
Miss Casewell?
Oh, yes, Mrs. Ralston, there's a very wide field. There's yourself, for instance.
Me?
Why not? You're about the right age.
Oh, but really,
whatever you tell me about yourself now...
And I know when I first saw it, I came with the sole purpose of guessing who the killer would be. There are only 8 in the cast, and I made 4 wrong decisions.
We saw it for the first time from the front a few weeks ago. And it's amazing how different. You know that the aspect is different if you're playing it, but somehow you don't realise it till you sit there with the audience and thought, oh yes, oh, and it was rather a gripping story. I mean, no one would believe that I could find it surprising, but it was. And it's very well played by the present cast, extremely well played.
Is this your husband's coat?
Yes.
Evening Standard. Yesterday's. Sold on the streets about 3:30 yesterday afternoon.
I don't believe it.
Don't you? Don't you?
Market Hampton 204. The Mousetrap is a record breaker. It's a very English curiosity. It's a draw for tourists, and it's a puzzling example of perennial popularity. But like all unexplained phenomena, perhaps it's best just to sit back and enjoy rather than ask too many questions.
Now, Theatreland may be defined by a square mile which contains most of the West End theatres, but there are a few further afield, like the Victoria Palace, only a mile away, which is currently shown an award-winning Broadway hit.
There's a madman known as Mac who is planning to attack.
Take a Shakespeare play.
Mad attack me.
Songs by Cole Porter set backstage at a theatre in the 1940s. Then mix that with Broadway stars fronting the talented West End cast, and the result, London's latest hit, Kiss Me Kate.
Kiss Me Kate is a musical version of The Taming of the Shrew. Now, it's called Kiss Me Kate, but really it's the story of Petruchio, which is the character I play. You see, Fred is the conceiver, producer, director, and everything of this show, and it takes no small ego in order to accomplish that.
When I'm coaxed
I play Lily Vanessa, Kate. It's sort of a play within the play. And Lily Vanessa is a theater actress turned movie star who's been fired by the studio, is back on the boards helping her ex-husband, Fred Graham, in his new production of the musical version of The Taming of the Shrew. They're divorced, they're still in love. He's dating a Corinne that he's made sort of the second lead in the show. She's engaged to a general sort of General MacArthur type. A bouquet of flowers is sent to her that she thinks is from Fred. It's meant for the other woman. She finds out. She gets really upset. And the row begins. She's such a strong Lily Vanessa, and Catherine, certainly, two very strong broads. I mean, ballsy women. And I think that's one of the things that really drew me to her, was her strength and her not being afraid to say what she thinks.
Avoid the traveling salesman, though a tempting Tom he may be. From China he will bring you jade and perfume from Arabia. But don't forget, 'tis he who'll have the fun and thee the baby. Oh, amen.
My character's name is Bill Calhoun. He is a Broadway hoofer. He's an old dancer in Broadway shows, but he gets this job to do this musical version of The Taming of the Shrew with his girlfriend, Lois Lane. He gets tired of rehearsal and he takes off and goes to a crapshoot game because he's got a major gambling problem. So he gambles away all of his money, and when they come after him for the IOU, he signs Fred Graham's name, who is the director of the show, who also plays Petruchio. So the gangsters come to the theater looking for Fred to sign the IOU, and that's how they get mixed up on the whole subplot. That's the most important purpose I have in the show.
Huh. I assure you there was nothing wrong between he and I.
Oh.
Just because a girl is good-hearted and normal and patriotic and wants to get along with her fellow man.
Why can't you behave?
In the show, I play Lois Lane, no relation to the Superman character, and she plays Bianca in Taming of the Shrew, and I think the only reason why she plays Bianca is because the director slash producer slash lead has the hots for her, so she's sort of the little chippy that he hires to put in the show for his own entertainment. And, but to call Lois dumb, she's not dumb. She is hoping to get to Broadway. That's her main goal, and she's bringing her boyfriend, Bill Calhoun, with her. And her whole thing is that, you know, she goes through life and these men are nice to her and they give her gifts and she thinks that's great, you know, but I think her boyfriend sees it as cheating. And that's where the big song, my favorite song in the show is Always True to You, Darling, in my fashion. I suppose you can't beat a number that's you and a spotlight and a blue dress.
I'm just mad for you, and I'll always be. But naturally, if a custom-tailored vet asks me out for something wet, when the vet begins to pet, I cry, hooray! But I'm always true to you, darling, in my fashion. Yes, I'm always true to you, darling, in my way. I enjoy a tender pass.
My character has this number in the second act, which is this sort of silly song that he wrote for his girlfriend. And there's actually a funny story about how the song came about. Cole Porter, apparently one day in rehearsal, the actor who played my role initially in 1948, wanted a number in the second act. And the rumor is that Cole purposely wrote this sort of stupid song to sort of teach him a lesson. And he went around the cast and said, can anyone think of a lyric that rhymes with Bianca, which was the name of the character who I'm in love with? And somebody said, yeah, Spanka, Papa Spanka. I was like, oh, that's funny. How about Sanka? Sanka rhymes with Bianca. So he wrote these things down. He goes away. He comes back 2 hours later, literally, and has written this song. And he gives it to the actor who was playing it.
Bianca, Bianca, oh Bianca,
You'd better answer yes or Papa Spanka. To win you, Bianca.
Unfortunately, that doesn't really fit in with showstopper after showstopper after showstopper. So we needed to find a way to try to make the number really land in a way that it hadn't in the past. And because I'm a gymnast and was trained as a gymnast for 10 years as a kid, Kathleen Marshall, who's the choreographer who I had worked with on Damn Yankees some years earlier, said, you know, maybe it'd be fun for you to do something really, you know, athletic. I looked at the set design in rehearsal and I saw this series of corridors and steel beams and balconies, and I just thought, wow, that looks fun. I could have a good time on that. Because it is a steel set, it is the real thing. It's not, I mean, it's as if a building has been moved onto the stage. And because I'm swinging and flipping and bouncing around a lot, I do get a lot of bang-ups, and I'm so used to being bruised. But as a matter of fact, I tend to live with an ice pack on my knee, which I'll take off. Actually,
Give up coffee.
it might be easier if I just show you on the set. All right, let's go. Hello, Stuart. Hi, Bob Penny.
For you.
So, as you can see, this is the set. Thank you, Robin Wagner. And as you can see, it's the real thing. So, now I'm not going to show you the whole thing because for that it's about $37.50 and you can sit right in the center of the orchestra. But I'll give you a little sneak preview. And at this point, my love appears on the balcony. She tosses down a rose, goes in the teeth, and I think it's a good idea to return it to her. There you have it. Easy peasy.
Well, it might be easy for Michael Berresse, but what about the poor guy who has to understudy him? I'm here with Nick Winston. Hiya, Nick.
Hiya.
So do you have to do it exactly the same as Michael?
Yeah, I'll have to try, yeah. But I can't do any backflips, so I got a chance to work with the choreographer and we've worked something else out. But the climb at the end, I get to do that. When we first went on stage and we saw the set and I looked up, I thought, I'm never going to get up there.
You frightened of heights?
Well, I'm not, no, but when it's just a, you know, wobbly piece of scenery. I shouldn't say that, but...
So have you actually been on yet?
No, not yet. He's as strong as an ox, Michael. He hasn't been sick or anything, so...
Really? Working through injuries and everything?
Yeah, I had a knee injury that you just worked through, so... But my mum's on the phone waiting for me to call her.
So you're on stage every night?
Yeah, I'm doing the show every night, and if Michael goes off, I'll have to change roles halfway through.
So you've got rehearsals downstairs now, haven't you?
Yeah.
Can I sneak in and have a little look?
OK.
Right, I'll see you down there.
All right.
And up. That's right, good. Long. And up. That's good. And there. Now, from there...
I'm resident director and resident choreographer. And as my husband says, that means I'm in charge of quality control. My main job is really making sure that the understudies are prepared and ready to go on at very short notice.
I think it's a matter of personal taste. You just got to find out which way is the best way for you to hold it.
I'm very lucky with Nick because I feel fairly secure with Nick because he is such a good dancer and he's very experienced. So actually he's made my job very easy in this respect. Some people, maybe it's their first show and so they don't have that experience. That's where I get very nervous.
And the important thing is that you'll really lock the heels. OK, careful.
The audience have come to see a hit show and they want to see the very best performers. And that's what we try to give them. The understudies have got a lot of responsibility. I wouldn't like the job.
Good. And there you are, you've done it.
Thanks.
OK.
It's a great sense of achievement to get up here finally. I spent so long just looking up at the set and not being able to touch it, but now I get to work through it. I feel really relieved.
Now, there was a time when London's West End was a theatrical place full of theatrical actors doing theatrical plays. But in the last sort of 5 years, that's changed. It's become much more fluid. You get films turned into plays, like The Full Monty and The Graduate. You get Hollywood superstars like Nicole Kidman coming over here, and you even get global TV icons stepping out of the small screen for our theatrical delight.
The Graduate played in London for nearly 2 years. It's the story of an older woman who seduces her best friend's son, based on the novel by Charles Webb, and immortalised in the classic 60s movie starring Anne Bancroft and Dustin Hoffman.
Linda, you've just finished a 4-month run of The Graduate in the West End in London.
Yes.
Tell us about the play and about your part.
Oh, the play and my part. One of the most delicious roles for women over 40 that I can imagine. I think everyone over a certain age has wanted to play. They sort of lust after playing Mrs. Robinson. She's delicious, complicated, a bit dysfunctional, and very interesting. So, what role is better than that? From the very moment that I walked out on stage, I wanted her to be different. I wanted her to be different than Anne Bancroft in the 60s, who was the epitome. I mean, she is Mrs. Robinson, let's face it. So, and then I saw Anne Archer, and I heard of Kathleen Turner's great role, and Jerry Hall, and Amanda Donoghue. So for me, I wanted to infuse my own personality and my own interpretation. And I thought, how do I want to do this? And I wanted to infuse her with a bit of joy and some fun. And the minute I walk out and stand in the doorway, I wanted Mrs. Robinson to begin by saying, not, I'm going to seduce you, but won't this be fun? I've been downstairs having a bit too much to drink at the party with very boring people, and I'm going to come up and just have a little bit of fun with Benjamin. So I infused her with joy and a bit of humor, a bit more humor than the film had. And I felt that that's what she needed.
So for most people, you're recognised as Sue Ellen from Dallas. Great TV acting. How different is theatre acting from that?
Totally different. For me to be invited to come to the West End, it was a huge honor. I mean, this is the epitome for me. It's like, you know, I know how people must feel. You know, a Hollywood television soap opera star coming to the West End. It's like, oh, sure, you know, let's watch this one. But for me, it was the honor of a lifetime. I was thrilled. And it was a challenge, and I was scared, and I was nervous, and all of the good things that make a good performance, I think.
Now, one of the notorious things about this production is that you have to appear nude.
Yes.
Was that something that you particularly worried about, or how did you feel about that?
I wasn't worried. I was terrified. I thought, what am I doing? I've never done anything like that in my life. Never, you know, nude Playboy, nothing. I've done nothing of the sort, and nor did I ever want to. It just isn't my style. But I felt that the lighting was beautiful. It was tastefully done. It was appropriate that she would do something this sort of drastic and daring to shock this poor innocent Benjamin. So that's what Mrs. Robinson would do. And if it was in broad daylight and terrible lighting, I wouldn't have done it, frankly.
The poster to The Graduate, the film on which this play is based, has a leg draped across the front of it, which everyone assumed was Anne Bancroft's. But in fact, it was yours. Tell me about that.
Well, there's really not much to tell. In the 60s, I was a model. And we would go from, you know, selling dish soap to dog food to, you know, modeling jobs, gigs during the day. And so one day I was asked to do this leg modeling, and there I was, like that, Mrs. Robinson. And who knew that all these years later, the whole, well, I was going to say the whole body would be there, but it's exactly what happened. So that's how it happened. Very sort of non-exciting story, but that's exactly what happened.
It's a weird coincidence, isn't it?
Very, very.
In your career, you've done television famously, you've done theatre, you've done film. What's next for Linda Gray?
My next venture is directing a feature film. So I'm I'm doing the odd job of trying to find financing for a feature film. So we've got a wonderful cast, European, all Europeans, and so as soon as I get all the money, off I go to direct a feature film. So then I'll report in and tell you how that went. Yeah. So that's the next. That's next.
That's a European project?
Yes.
So we're going to see more of you in London?
I hope so.
Now here's your chance to be an Olivier Award judge and decide who should win the Audience Award for the most popular show. Here are the 4 nominations. Cats. Based on a series of poems by T.S. Eliot, Cats opened in London 21 years ago. It's the longest-running musical in both West End and Broadway history. If you want to vote for Cats, call 09001 44 7701. 09001 44 7701. Mamma Mia. The songs of ABBA were the inspiration for Mamma Mia, a tale of family and friendship set on a mythical Greek island. If you want to vote for Mamma Mia, call 09001 44 7702. 09001 44 7702. The Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom of the Opera opened in 1986 at Her Majesty's Theatre, where it has played over 6,000 performances. Set in the Paris Opera House, it's a story of unrequited love. If you want to vote for Phantom of the Opera, call 09001 44 7703. 09001 44 7703. And finally, the Reduced Shakespeare Company. The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged is a show where the audience is taken through the playwright's 37 plays in 97 minutes. It's currently the longest-running comedy in the West End. If you want to vote for the Reduced Shakespeare Company, call 09001 44 7704. 09001 44 7704. All this week, you can vote by telephone for the show you think deserves to win the Audience Award for the most popular show. Calls cost a maximum of 10 pence. Lines will close on Thursday at 5 p.m, and the results will be announced on Friday's programme. Still to come, amateur dramatics. Just why is it so popular in the UK? The Phantom of the Opera shows us how he's transformed for his star role. But first, finding your way around town.
Coming into London by train, you'll arrive at one of the mainline stations. From the north, you're likely to pull into King's Cross or Euston, and if you're coming up from the south, you'll land in Victoria or Waterloo. Paddington services the West Country and Liverpool Street the East.
So what do you do once you get off the train? Well, sit tight for our theatre goer's guide to travel in the big smoke. First up, the Tube. All mainline stations are connected to the Underground network, and that's divided up into zones. And all your destinations for theatre going are in Zone 1.
So if you get to London after 9:30 in the morning, make sure you buy yourself a Zone 1 and 2 travel card, because that'll give you unlimited tube and bus access all day for just £4.10. Otherwise, you'll keep on buying expensive single tickets, which range from £1.60 to a whopping £3.60.
One of the real problems that we face in London is that the transport is expensive. The tube is twice what you'd pay in Paris and a third more than you'd pay in New York.
That said, it is the most efficient way of cruising around the capital.
Remember that between 4 and 6 in the evening is rush hour in the capital, so the tube tends to get a little cosy. So unless you fancy staring at your neighbour's armpit for a long journey, you may like to stay above ground.
We'll take a trip, gonna take a journey, babe. In addition to being plastered all over T-shirts worn by tourists from around the globe, the Big Red London Bus is one of the best means of travelling around the city.
Bus buses can be panic-inducingly slow if you're rushing to catch the theatre, and they're a little bit erratic, but if you've got time, they're the best way to observe all the bustle of the city without having to plod your way through it. And they're also quite cheap.
Anywhere in central London, a bus trip will cost you £1. And if you're not sure about your route, then London Travel Information is a 24-hour service offering advice on buses, tubes and trains.
Time to hit the road to dreamland.
Now, if any kind of public transport is too public for you and you decide to bring your car into London, then beware, because the traffic can be terrible. Unless you know the city really well, it's quite easy to get lost. And oy vey, the parking. Leaving your car at a meter or pay and display, if you can find a spot, can cost up to £4 an hour, and you'll only be able to park there for 2 to 4 hours. Central London car parks cost between £5 and £8 for up to 2 hours. If you're tempted to park elsewhere, then make sure it's legal, because it will cost you £165 to release your car from the clamp or the pound. There is some good news if you're a car driver and you're going to see a show, because your theatre tickets will get you a discount in car parks in and around Leicester Square, which is a good thing.
It can save you up to £22 on a day's parking. If you don't fancy public transport and it's too much hassle to bring your car into town, you're probably better off getting a cab. That's if you can find one.
Now, although you might not think so on a Saturday night, there are in fact 20,000 licensed cabs in London. And sometimes, although they're expensive, black cabs are just the way to travel. They're luxurious, and their taxi drivers are a mine of useful information. How much does a black cab cost?
Well, the basic rate is, as soon as you get in, it's £1.40. That's your flag charge. And then it's 40 pence a person extra. Basic sort of job within the West End's about £6. And after 8 o'clock, it goes to about £8.
Why are there more black cabs out and about late at night than there were before?
Because they've altered the rate. And now we're getting a fairer crack of the whip.
When black cab fares went up dramatically end of last year, it was to try and get more cabs out on the streets at night so that people aren't preyed upon by the illegal cab touts. And that has worked. I mean, I've lived all my life in London. I've never seen so many black cabs out at night.
But if you can't find a black cab and are thinking about catching a mini cab, here's the deal. Don't flag them down from the street. They could be illegal and might not be insured. Go instead to a minicab office, which usually have beacons. And whatever you do, make sure you agree a fare in advance.
Now, if you haven't got too far to go and you don't mind travelling at about 10 miles an hour, then there is an alternative. The rickshaw is London's newest form of transportation. And although it's not regulated, you have to haggle for your price, it works out about the same cost as a black cab ride. Though you don't want to go too far, because it gets really nippy.
This is the Palace Theatre, and Les Miserables has been running here for nearly 17 years. It's one of the longest-running musicals, and Sir Cameron Mackintosh is the man behind its success. Cameron started producing at the age of 20, and since then has produced over 40 musicals. But when did the West End's most successful entrepreneur get bitten by the theatre bug?
I was dragged to see the musical Salad Days when I was 8, and I thought it would be terribly sissy to see people singing and dancing on stage. And lo and behold, when I went to see the show at the Vaudeville Theatre back in 1954, it was all about a magic piano that made all London dance, and by the interval I was at it. And I insisted to come back and see the show the following week, and went to meet this Julian Slade, who was the composer of the show and playing the piano in the pit. And he was the one that took me backstage, and I was just fascinated by how it happened. And he showed me practically how it happened, how the actors sort of mimed to mini the magic piano, and he played the piano in the pit. And I went, this is what I'm going to do when I grow up. After I'd left drama school, I decided to go and try and get a job as a stagehand. And that led to going on tour in Oliver as an assistant stage manager who also had to appear in the show. And I was rather surprised about that because my acting, singing and dancing is completely awful. But luckily the other ASM was worse than I was, so I was put into the show, and I had just a ball touring the country, seeing and being in a great show like that. And of course, Oliver's been an incredible part of my life ever since.
His first West End musical was Anything Goes in 1969.
Everything that could possibly go wrong with Anything Goes did. The leading lady walked out, the conductor walked out, the scenery fell down, the costumes got changed. I mean, it was one disaster after another. But I assumed that that was normal. I didn't have any experience otherwise, and I think if I'd been rich and had, you know, tens of thousands of pounds to lose, and then lost it, I would have probably gone, well, I haven't got any more money, I can't produce. But as I was begging and borrowing £10 here and £25 there, I just assumed that disaster was the normal bread and butter of being a producer. And I think because of that, there was a great guy called Richard Mills who used to work for Bernard Delfont at that time. And the night before it closed, I was in the bar sobbing my heart out, thinking this is the end. And he said, no, no, he said, if you survive this, you'll survive in the theatre, and I'm very glad to say he was right.
Cameron survived to go on to produce Les Miserables, fondly known as the People's Musical.
There is a castle on a cloud.
It took me 3 years to work on Les Miserables, which was an album that had been brought to me. I listened to the music and I was blown away by it, and I then tracked Alain Boublil and Claude-Michel Schonberg, the authors, in Paris, and told them I wanted to do the show and rebuild it with them. John Napier's design for Les Miserables is absolutely brilliant because it's terribly simple. It's two pieces of junk made up of the human lives of the Paris that form the barricades, tables and chairs. And the way that they form together for the barricade is just a wonderful coup de théâtre. But the basic space of Les Miserables is actually just buttresses and bricks and stones and cobbles. 2 of the 3 hours of the show take place on an empty stage, which just turns, with tables and chairs and the odd pair of gates. People don't realise that. They think they're seeing masses of scenery, but in fact, like all great theatre, it's the use of the space rather than piling it full of materials that make it.
It's all about justice, injustice, faith, and better future and misery.
Before opening at the Palace Theatre, Les Miserables started life at the Barbican, where the critics were not particularly kind.
When the tabloids thought this was too intellectual a show, and it was too complicated for the musical theatre in general, so they just, very few of them gave it any chance that it would survive more than, you know, 6 months or a year.
Survive it did. It went on to play in 205 cities in 33 countries.
The most strange song of the show was the one we wrote 3 weeks before the opening. And because of Colm Wilkinson, who created the part of Jean Valjean. He had such a wonderful falsetto voice. So I went back to Paris, and I wrote it very high in the pitch and in the range. We decided it was going to be a prayer after the lyrics were written, and somebody from the cast came to us and told us that Trevor Nunn told us that the show is about God, but nobody told us that God is going to sing in the show.
Les Mis is a long-running production is The Phantom of the Opera, and today the title role is played by John Owen-Jones, and we followed him for a day. The Phantom of the
It's incredible playing the Phantom. It's something I wanted to do for a very long time, probably since I started acting, actually. The Phantom's such an iconic character. Everybody recognises him. You know, you put his picture on the side of a bus, everybody knows who he is. So I wanted to get a bit of that, and it's fantastic. I've been doing it for about 6 months. Yeah, I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's brilliant. My day is in reverse to normal people, where they get up, go to work, come home and relax. I get up, relax, and then go to work and then come home. And I like to, you know, go out for lunch with my wife or something like that, or maybe walk the dog. I usually walk the dog every day. It helps to clear my head, you know. I find it very relaxing having a pet, which helps me to take my mind off the show. But I'll often have a late lunch with a director, my agent, friends, other actors, you know. I think today I might be going in to see the musical director and then talk about the show. What's the line again? Flattering child, you shall know me. See why in shadow I hide.
See, you're extending that one.
See why in shadow, I call it. Yeah. So, if you want a blow-by-blow account of what I do when I get into the theatre, it kind of goes like this. I go in, say hello to the stage doorkeeper. Hello, I say. He gives me my keys. I go in, then I open my dressing room up, and often it's open anyway because Tanya, the makeup genius who does my makeup every night and afternoon when I do matinees, she's usually there preparing the makeup in advance because the pieces need to be painted. And then I usually just start to warm up, really. I've got a little tape which I put on and sing along to, do a few scales. Ma, 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 ma. So, after having done a warm-up, I go straight into the makeup chair, which takes a couple of hours. First of all, I have a specially made bald cap. And it's like a latex cap which glues all the way around there and around the back of my neck. When they come, they're just plain, like beige-coloured latex, moulded to my face. I had to go and have a fitting where they fit all the makeup. To each individual Phantom has their own makeup because we've all got different size faces, you know, big noses, things like that. So that's really the prosthetics, which that takes about an hour to do.
Sorry.
Hello.
Got a sponge, please.
Sponge.
Thank you. Transformed.
Transformed.
Look.
Looking gorgeous.
I know, they haven't done anything to me yet.
It's a Claire Rayner with sideburns.
There you go,
Fantastic. That was Charles. He plays Monsieur Andre. This is Christine. She does my wigs.
All right, Christine.
Hi there, Tom.
So
You're
she'll
right.
be putting my wigs on tonight because I wear 2 wigs, but you don't find out about the second wig until.
Bit of a secret.
Yeah. It kind of feels like someone's pulling on my skin. That's about, but it's quite claustrophobic, and when I get the 2 wigs on and the mask and the hat, it's like wearing a crash helmet. It's like you can't hear, you can't see. It is quite claustrophobic, but at the same time, I'm used to it. This is Pat, who, what are you, ASM, DSM, SM?
SM tonight.
SM tonight, yeah, because you vary your roles, don't you?
Yeah, he does. We all sort of swap around.
So what you driving the boat, or are you doing the alternate?
No, I'll be looking after it, overseeing, sort of making sure the show's okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that you're okay.
There's lots of technical checks, especially in a show like Phantom, which is extremely technical because it's so spectacular. There are explosions and all sorts of things flying in and out. So there's a lot of things that go on, you know, the crew, the stage management, all have to come. They all have a specific role to fill, and they all have a certain time to do it, just like I do. You know, so it's a really well-oiled machine. Come in!
Hiya!
Hello, Claire.
Hi.
Hello, Claire Hammond, who plays Christine.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not bad. How are you?
Shall I come and say hello?
Well, it's nice to see you. Because I don't always see you, do I?
Oh, you see enough of me.
I do see enough of you. You know the kiss we do at the end? Can we make it, like, really, really long tonight? That'd be nice.
The unedited version, isn't it?
Yeah, just really long, you know, like it's got to be a certain length. But I enjoy it so much, you know.
He's saucy, that one.
Saucy.
On that note, I think I'll leave you to it.
Okay, well, let's have a good show.
All right, then, I'll see you out there.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Before the wigs go on, I have 2 microphones. They're stuck to my head on the ball cap. I have 2 mics on when normally actors wear 1, because sweat is a problem as the Phantom, because I have basically this rubber thing on my head and there's nowhere for the heat to go. And as soon as sweat gets into the mic, it's just, you can't get any sound out of it. So they have to have a spare. When the mask goes on, it's not white. Everyone thinks it's white, but it's actually shaded and coloured, so it looks more defined. You know, if you look on the side, there's like a Roman nose, and it's all for a reason. I'm gonna pop in here now, take my clothes off, and when I come back out, I'll be even more gorgeous.
I am the mask to wear.
Gotta work now. See ya.
My spirit and your voice in one combined. The phantom of the opera is there inside your in all your fantasies, you always knew that man and mystery
Were both you.
and in this labyrinth where night is blind, the phantom of the opera is there inside your mind. Sing for me, my angel music.
He's there, the phantom of the opera.
Sing!
Come all the way from Australia to see this.
The talent was incredible. So beautiful it was. He was the most marvellous singer. Made me cry because he was so lovely.
That acting malarkey. Anyone can do it. Oh, Lord love you, Mary Poppins. To be or not. A Hamburg? Now is the winter of our discontent. The hills are alive with the sun. Well, obviously I can't act for toffee, but there are actors across Britain who really can, and not just in the West End. Across the country there are thousands of you who give up every weekend and evening in order to slap on the grease paint, tread the boards just for the love of it.
It's all to do with acting. Makeup, wigs and things.
These flowers they've given me. I mean, one does not pick dahlias and chrysanthemums in an alpine meadow.
Amateur drama is huge in the UK. We've got approximately 17,000 dedicated groups up and down the country that produce drama on a week-by-week basis.
You can't have forgotten my fairy queen in the church pantomime.
You really had to be prepared to put yourself out there to make a fool of yourself in front of the public.
I could have saved that show. Instead of which I gave a performance that plumbed the very depths of ineptitude.
Yes, you can have an awful performance on one occasion and say, never again, but eventually you'll put that to the back of your mind.
Putting performance firmly to the back of his mind is city gent Tony Hobro.
Oh, look, magazine.
For Tony, the stage is the ultimate stress buster.
It's a total release, absolute release, and it just banishes all work from your mind, really.
Hi, diddly-dee, an actor's life for me. A high silk hat and a silver cane, a watch of gold with a diamond chain. Hi, diddly-day, an actor's life is gay. It's great to be a celebrity, an actor's life for me.
I suppose it's just something completely different. It's fun. You put on a different persona, so you're one person at work, you're another person on the stage. And I suspect to some degree we're a different person at home as well. We were undoubtedly extremely amateur when we started.
How dare you! Oh, I have never been so insulted.
Now we have a professional director.
Do you know what I mean? When he says, I've never been so insulted. Well, you should get out more, madam, or something like that. I'm sure there's a joke.
And we've come on a huge long way, but we're still clearly at the amateur end of the scale. But very enthusiastic.
Amateur means to do something from love. It doesn't mean to be second-rate. How lovely you are.
No, that came later. You skipped.
I'm sorry.
You're nice. Your eyes are funny.
We've had many actors through our group who have then gone on to become professional actors. You also see it in reverse. My wife was quite a successful professional actress.
I'm afraid you're dreadfully attractive.
She gave it up when she had a family, but she didn't give up the theatre, and she's carried on doing amateur theatre all this time and giving out performances which most professionals would be very proud of.
No more buts, Mrs. Worthington! Oh, nuts, Mrs. Worthington! Don't put your daughter on the stage!
Had Mrs. Worthington's daughter lived in London's fashionable Ealing, her dramatic pretensions would have doubtless led her here. The Questors Theatre is technically a facility for amateurs, but Amdram is a very broad church. There's Village Hall, and there's, well, this.
We have a commitment here that I think probably far exceeds most amateur theatres. I would think in terms of the number of hours we put in, it's on a par with a professional production.
Hollywood does not forgive a party pooper.
Which is why the intro clip is so important. It's gotta have balls.
Shows here tend to rehearse for 6 or 7 weeks, usually 4 or 5 evenings a week and all day on Sunday. So it's pretty serious.
At this level, there is even input from the professional stage. Here at Questors, you can find real actors rubbing shoulders with the weekend Gilgoods.
If you're in between jobs and you don't have to be earning lots of money in the meantime by doing something else, it's an excellent way of keeping the cogs going.
The girls' private parts are not shown, they're implied.
A lot of people have the view of amateur as Village Hall, very local, very poor quality, really.
Who's making the associations? The psychos themselves? I don't think so.
That stereotype of amateur theatre isn't necessarily true. Goes all the way through the spectrum to places like this.
Artists don't create a society, they reflect it.
People who are willing to give a lot of time and people with a lot of talent, so the quality gets up near professional, and I think sometimes surpasses some of the professional productions I've seen.
Errol stares up Conchita's private parts in a manner that clearly implies an ironic juxtaposition. Well, didn't you get that?
Bruce, I just produced a movie. Who cares if I get stuff?
You can get away with being an old ham in a way that you probably couldn't if you're doing it for cash. You know, and I think I think amateur theatre's a lot more forgiving for obvious reasons.
It's cheaper for a start than professional theatre, so I think that's one big advantage. And it helps people feel part of their community, I suppose, by supporting it, either being in it or going to see it.
You get a buzz standing out there, front of stage, looking at audiences, enjoying themselves.
I think the social aspect is probably the most enjoyable part.
You work together collectively as a team, and therefore you share the pleasure as a team.
You can let your hair down and get on and have a jolly good act.
You can't show tits on network TV.
Now, if all this has whetted your appetite for a night at the theatre, we might just be able to help you. We're giving you the chance to win tickets for a top West End show if you can answer this question. Where was the original UK production of Les Miserables staged? Was it A, the Barbican, B, the National, or C, the Palace Theatre? Where was the original UK production of Les Miserables staged? Was it A, the Barbican, B, the National Theatre, or C, the Palace Theatre? If you think you know the answer, call us on 090 11 120 100. Calls will cost 25p and the lines will close at midnight on the 15th of February. The winners will be announced on CFAX page 617 on the 20th of February. Tomorrow, if you love the songs of ABBA, you're in for a treat as we discover the story behind the hit musical Mamma Mia. We'll be talking to peak practice star Simon Shepherd about his role in the award-winning play Art. We're behind the scenes of the new musical Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as it prepares for its West End opening in April. Well, that's all for today. I've got a show to do. But we leave you with a song from Kiss Me Kate.
There's a wealthy Hindu priest who's a wolf, to say the least. When the priest goes too far east, I also stray. But I'm always true to you, darling, in my fashion. Yes, I'm always true to you, darling, in my way. There's a lush from Portland, who is rich but such a bore. Woo! When the bore falls on the floor, I let him lay. But I'm always true to you, darling, in my fashion. Yes, I'm always true to you, darling, in my way. Mr. Harris, plutocrat, wants to give my cheek a pat. If the Harris pat means a Paris hat, mais je suis toujours fidèle, darling, in my fashion. Oui, je suis toujours fidèle, darling, in my way. From Ohio, Mr. Thorne calls me up from night till morn. Mr. Thorne once cornered corn, and that ain't hay. But I'm always true to you, darling, in my fashion. Yes, I'm always true to you, darling, in my way. Mr. Gable, Clark, wants me on his boat to park. If the Gable boat